Alright, what is trauma?
So trauma is basically any external stimuli that is going to have a negative impact on a person's either psychological or physiological behavior.
It can be any kind of neglect or abuse. It can be growing up in poverty. It can be a bullying situation. It can be the loss of a loved one. Or it can be a specific one-time experience. Or it can be something that's spread out over time.
Trauma is something that you'll never forget, and it's definitely going to change who you are.
You know, it never really leaves them, you know, and it can, even when it doesn't leave them, it can leave them with a lot of different problems with themselves maybe, and you know, maybe problems with society, you know.
And maybe even some words that were said to somebody that would cause them to feel either bad about themselves or would potentially cause them to feel like they maybe want to self-harm themselves or harm somebody else.
Anything that affects your daily routines. If it is plaguing your mind, something that has happened, it continually affects you, that may be trauma.
Trauma can have a huge impact on student learning, as it basically can cause them to kind of shut down.
You can't approach learning, teaching and learning until you meet the basic needs of a student and they feel
they can't even focus. They're so consumed by what has happened to them that that's all they can think about.
It can leave them scarred, for sure. Because, you don't know how bad you don't know how someone deals with a problem. Some people are better at dealing with it than others. So, if it's something, really bad and, really affects them that bad, then they can probably go from the happiest person completely shut down and not talk to anyone, and they can probably push their friends away and just go to themselves and not talk to anyone about it. And they think that they're alone, and they think that that no one's listening, and they don't want to be a bother and they want to do it by themselves. But I think the more that they deal with it themselves is the more that they start to break themselves down, and you don't know what can go on in their head because they don't tell you.
If it's that serious, it's always in their head, so they're always thinking about it.
But you know, if something traumatic happens that leaves them, you know, maybe depressed or anxious, you know, it might seclude them more from people in the classroom, or it might make them lash out or act differently than they normally would.
When I was about 10, my father died. And, you know, I remember that next year at school was very challenging. You know, it was hard for me to kind of stay focused. So coming from that background, I can definitely understand why kids, you know, struggle in school after a major trauma has happened in their lives.
So if they have something disruptive in their life, if they have a traumatic experience that has just happened or is happening on a daily basis that isn't being addressed, then their brain isn't in a state that it is able to absorb and keep information. So
we can either be more introverted, like myself, where you kind of just shut down internally and you just kind of shut yourself off from the world. Or it could be the other direction, where you become, you know, much more angry and violent. Any little thing that it's kind of like toddlers, something that's so little to us with a toddler is a huge thing to them. And it's because I think they're trying to get control over everything all the time.
They could be walking in the halls, they could just feel very either angry and erratic, they don't know how to control themselves, they don't know who to tell, they don't know who they can trust, and they just don't feel comfortable being in the environment here because it could have happened at school, or even if it happened at home, they just don't know what to do with themselves.
It can show up in school more than anywhere else, because that's where children are most of the time. So, and that's where they have to be around the most, around people. So that's where they have to learn how to hold it in or deal with it a certain way.
If something were to happen to me, I'm a very talkative kid, so I'm very outgoing. And if something really bad happened to me, I feel I would kind of put myself away from other people.
There's no real way to tell, because everybody deals with something their own way. I mean, some people could, some people deal with stuff like that, and they're always those are people that are always the most happy because they feel they have to mask it, or some people could just distance themselves from everybody. So you can really never tell. You just have to get to know the individual.
Yes, because I feel every student has that one or two teachers that they can actually trust and go to. They kind of look at them as a friend. But I think it mostly depends on the student to see if they're willing to tell the teachers that this is what's going on, I can't do this myself, I need help, like, I'm not okay. But if the student doesn't do that, then what can the teacher do? Like, the teacher can't really do anything if they don't know what's going on.
I think trauma can lead to a lot of misguided introspective, as if you're blaming yourself for what has happened beyond your control.
And I think the more we know, the better we would be able to be equipped to handle them, or even just meet them at their level. If they don't want to tell us everything that's happened because it's so personal, we would be able to at least identify with them and tell them that, like, hey, we're here for you. We don't need to know everything, but we need to know that, you know, that you have had something happen to you, or you have felt like something's happened to you, or that something's been said or done, and that we are in your corner and we're on your side for you.
Really, what you have to do as a teacher is kind of look for the signs in students that there might have been a trauma, and then try to help the student the best way that you can. Because sometimes students will come to you, you know, if they know you and they trust you and they've had a trauma in their lives, you know, they want you to know about it. They want you to know that this is going to have an impact. But there are a lot of students that won't.
I guess basically when you approach somebody out of care and love, you get a very different result than when you approach a situation in anger or frustration, because that's a lot of times, you know, not anything that's going to help a kid move forward.
It can show up in school more than anywhere else, because that's where children are most of the time. So, and that's where they have to be around the most amount of people. So that's where they have to learn how to, like, hold it in or deal with it a certain way.
If something were to happen to me, I'm a very talkative kid, so I'm very outgoing. And if something like really bad happened to me, I feel like I would kind of like put myself away from other people, and I feel like people would notice that and try to figure out what happened.
There's no real way to tell, because everybody deals with something their own way. I mean, some people could, some people deal with like stuff like that, and they're always like, those are people that are always like the most happy because like they feel like they have to mask it, or like some people could just distance themselves from everybody. So you can really never tell. You just have to like get to know the individual.
I think it mostly depends on the student to see if they're willing to tell the teachers that this is what's going on, I can't do this myself, I need help, like, I'm not okay. But if the student doesn't do that, then what can the teacher do? Like, the teacher can't really do anything if they don't know what's going on.
If you and your teacher aren't on like the same level for your learning, then I feel like it could impact you and you could fall behind from the other kids in your class.
I mean, some teachers obviously are a little less, just maybe seem like they don't want to be doing what they're doing, so those are probably the hardest to deal with.
At the beginning of the year, I think teachers, you know, they try to get to know their students well, and, you know, typically it's like a first day type of thing, and then, you know, the rest of the year it's just learning and all that. I think teachers could definitely improve upon learning more about their students, you know, and it's not per se all classes, but certainly more the the curricular classes instead of the, you know, like classes like art or anything. It's more of the English and math subjects where the teachers don't really try to bond with the students very much. And I definitely think that, like, if they get to know their students more, they can definitely learn, like, what keeps them, you know, going and what keeps them, like, stopped.
I feel like if a student has a strong connection with a certain teacher, and like that teacher sees that they're not acting as like normal, then they could try to like take their favorite activities or something like that and try to include it into the lesson that they're learning, so they can try to bring them back out and get them into a happier state.